Right, hopefully we should be live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Saints View, the channel for Southern content for a pretty big stream. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to unfold. The main news, of course, Nathan Jones has been relieved of his duties as Southampton manager after just 8 Premier League games in charge, one of the shortest ever reigns in the top flight. I believe Southampton's, or I should say, the less top. How would you say it? I don't even know. Basically, he's not been around for that long. To join me in the discussion, basing off Wolves, obviously the sacking, and who could next be the Southampton manager. I've got Rob and Lim as always, gents. How are we feeling after today's news? Rob, you first, mate.
Yeah, well, happy. I think that's the first thing, isn't it? I think most fans can be pleased by Sport Republic actually taking action for once and ensuring that Jones isn't in charge against Chelsea. Yeah, obviously still really angry and disappointed about yesterday, and so it was quite nice to wake up. And I was actually in the car driving back from Southampton when the news dropped, so I had to pull over and kind of see if it was true. But no, I'm quite happy about the news. Whether it's too little or too late, I think we're going to find out shortly anyway. But
Liam, how are you feeling about it?
Yeah, obviously happy about it. Like for me, even though, like Rob said, it's good to see Sport Republic acting. For me, it's a little too late. Should have gone last week, and probably could have gone before. To be fair, so I mean, obviously, I'm happy it's now done, but we'll just see where we go from here. See what we're getting, and we'll see after that. See if it's late or not.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It literally feels like going straight back to the drawing board. It feels like so much time has been wasted. You know, since Nathan Jones was appointed, we've only added 3 points to our tally. We're still bottom of the league, you know, and we've got 8 games fewer to play now, and for me, 8 fewer chances to end this rut. But I think in general, obviously, we all know how the fan base felt about Nathan Jones. You know, we saw it in Rob's space. We saw it across the whole timeline for the last couple of days. Everyone, you know, I've never seen the fan base so united over one topic. And, you know, it's a shame that it came to be over the sacking of a manager. But ultimately, it was the wrong appointment. From my perspective, I'm glad that Sport Republic have made the decision, even though, you know, I do think it's too late. And we'll discuss that later on in the stream. But yeah, like I said, if it does feel like it's back to square one. You know, it's another sacking. And again, we're looking for a new permanent manager. I did a tweet earlier putting out saying that from my opinion anyway, I think that there are 3 types of manager we could get in. I think, or 3 options, should I say. I think there's giving it to Ruben Sellers for the end of the season. I think there's going for a manager we can see as a long-term coach of Southampton, you know, and give them maybe not as long a contract as Nathan Jones got, but definitely one that goes beyond the end of the season. Or we do employ someone literally just for the short term with the hope that they can somehow keep us up. And I think out of those 3 options, my personal preferred choice, I think I'm leaning towards 2 in terms of trying and actually get someone that we could see a long-term future with. You know, there are 16 games still, and we are only 4 points off safety. It's still very achievable with the squad that we've got. But I can't help but feel that a survival specialist probably is something we need. You know, the appointment we made was someone who didn't know the Premier League. I was naive to it, and we saw that. I don't know, Rob. How do you feel about it? You know, because it does feel like there's limited options. Obviously, we'll talk about the men in the running for the job in a bit. But
yeah, of course.
If you're on the board, if you're Rasmus Ankerson, your best pal, obviously after last week, what are you thinking in terms of the appointment?
I think it's difficult because you can look at it from 2 ways, right? I mean, before the stream we spoke about 2017-18, you can look short term and think, well, you know, Saints bottom of the league, we want to ideally stay up. So you can hire a manager for the short term, like a Mark Hughes, or God help us, a Sam Allardyce, or Sean Dyche when he was available. But Sean Dyche probably is a little bit more of a long term manager anyway. Or you can look, as I said, to the long term. So you can think, well, okay, so Saints very likely we're going to go down. Incredibly likely we're going to go down, seeing as we're bottom of the league and now 4 points adrift. We can hopefully look to get a manager in who could potentially get us straight back out of the Championship into the Premier League and then push on from there as if we stayed up last season, for example, this season, for example. The way which I think Sport Republic are going to look at it, I'm really not sure. It wouldn't shock me if Sellers just got it to the end of the season, but I don't see them doing that. I just, you could give it Sellers, but we don't know enough about Sellers in order to give it to him. And since he has come in, we haven't played great football. So who even knows if he's making a massive difference anyway? People say, the players respect him. We don't know that they do. We don't know the relationship that they have with Ruben Sellers. So I'm not sure. I do think what we will look for is a long-term manager. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about personnel, but I get the feeling that Sport Republic want to find their own Ralph, and maybe Martin Semmens will kind of help with that. And I hope he does have a say on it, because there's no way it should be just left to Rasmus Ankersen, or else he'll just hire us his second choice from Nathan Jones.
I mean, I was having this conversation with a fellow Saints mate privately about that. But this was yesterday before Nathan Jones was sacked, but after seeing the result, I wasn't at St Mary's. But I think, assuming they go, it's a tough one, because assuming they do go down, obviously, if you go straight back up, I think every Saints fan would be like, okay, that's enjoyable. If there's a guarantee that you return, I think people think, okay, well, maybe we do take that. Maybe we do need a refresh, but it's always about that guarantee. There's obviously no guarantee. We've seen clubs get stuck down there. We've been that club. We went down to League One. I think every fan would be obviously very worried about that. But we were comparing Saints to Burnley right now, because the Burnley model is very interesting, because for years under Sean Dyche, they were seen as this rigid, just unattractive club playing unattractive football. It's
very poor as well.
Nasty place to go. And obviously they were eventually relegated. But what they've done under Vincent Kompany, they've got a young, exciting manager in, playing really nice football, really exciting youngsters. Obviously Nathan Teller is doing really well there. And their identity's completely changed. And they're going to be a completely different prospect back in the Premier League next season to whatever they were before. And for me, it feels like if there was the guarantee of Southampton having something similar, I think a lot of fans surprisingly would take that. I think if it's all about the guarantee, but it does feel there's, under Jones, everything's gotten stale. Everything's kind of gotten just really uninspiring. And
it's got boring.
It has got boring. And I don't necessarily think it's just Nathan Jones. I think that was happening for a while. It was so predictable under Ralph. It's, those 2 seasons where we finished pretty much in the same way towards the end, after being, in the top half and then dropping down to 15th. We got predictable, we got stale. So this next manager, if it is going to be a long-term appointment, it has to be an exciting one in my opinion. And I think that leads me nicely into the candidates that are coming out at the moment. Obviously, reported today after the news that Nathan Jones has been sacked, that Jesse Marsh is currently the favourite for the job, or at least Southampton have identified him as a possibility even before we got on the stream. No, and I personally echo it.
That's damning.
Liam, I'll go on to you in a sec, but I was saying this to you boys just now before we went live. It's so uninspiring for me. I think the Nathan Jones appointment, no one was inspired by that, especially when you see Wolves going for Lopetegui, Villa, because they were near us at that point, going for Unai Emery. It was so uninspiring, and I think fans could not necessarily see how badly it went, but I think they could see it going badly from a mile off before he even signed the contract. And the football club now have to get a fan base that feels totally disconnected from the board back on their side. And appointing a manager who was just sacked by a relegation rival to try and keep you in the Premier League is not the way to do that. And I could sit here and say, yeah, they need to throw all the money they can at Pochettino, or Gallardo would be great. I don't think either is realistic. I think with Gallardo, it's one of those where I don't know if he speaks English. It's a completely different league. I really don't feel like he'd be the right appointment for now to keep us up. I think if we stayed up in the summer, that'd be amazing. Poch, it is so unrealistic. But if Jesse Marsh is genuinely their first choice candidate, I'm incredibly uninspired by that. And it doesn't fill me with any sort of confidence that he can keep the team in the Premier League. Liam, you made a good point just before we went on air about how Marsh could be that arm around the players that maybe they need. What explain to everyone watching what you mean by that and kind of elaborate.
Look, these players are very obviously lack of confidence and not lack of ability, just lack of confidence. And you can see that. Nathan Jones is not the manager you want when you have a team with lack of confidence. He's just so negative with everything, especially in his press conferences. That doesn't come out to be good to the players. The players look at it and think it's not great, especially when we saw like Lavia in the space and stuff like that. These players shouldn't be involved and stuff like that. Jesse Marsh is the typical guy to come in and put his arm around his shoulder and get these players going. And he's been known for his wacky comments and stuff like that. But I think he'd be good for the players to get them going. Would it be a great appointment? No. Is it very underwhelming? Yes. But no fan can expect us to go out there and attract a manager with the way we're at the moment, and especially the way we're run. That's my problem. Bring in anyone who we bring in right now, no one's going to realistically be happy with it. So you just got to get on with what you're going to get. And if that means us going down and rebuild next season, so be it. Obviously, look, Marsh is not someone I'd like to bring in, but I wouldn't be unhappy with it, and I wouldn't be happy with it. So it's like, well, we don't win either way. So I think that's what the fans got to look at it.
You say the club is in a position that is obviously unattractive right now, and you're spot on. They're 20th in the Premier League. They've got a good squad, they've invested in that squad. They were the second highest spenders in January. But do you not think then, if going for someone like Marsh, I don't know how to phrase this, I guess, do you not think that going for someone like Marsh just feels like a panic, like almost like it was with Nathan Jones? That doesn't seem sustainable to me. That doesn't sound to me like an appointment that would stay with us beyond relegation and try and get us back up into the Premier League. This guy's managed Champions League football, albeit not very well, but he has managed Champions League football, and he went to Leeds. It hasn't worked out. Do you really believe that that's the right type of appointment, Liam? Like that we should be going for someone that we hand another long-term contract, but if it doesn't go well, they'll obviously leave. Do you really think that's what we should be doing?
No, obviously not. For me, I think bringing in Jesse Marsh on an 18-month deal, I think it's you don't really lose from that. For me, anyway. Look, if he keeps us up, then he's still got another year. Then if he does well in that season, then you can offer him a new deal. And if he goes down, he said he's only got a year left on his contract, so we're not going to be paying out for him like we're paying out for Jones. So I think that's like a win-win deal, but technically it is. So, but the problem is, who else do we bring in? Poch is not going to come back.
Can I throw a name in the ring?
Huh?
Yeah.
I'd like my number one. If I had to choose, like someone who would, I mean, let's face it, right? We are likely to go down. Okay, like this league is way too strong for me. I like Liam's idea of an 18-month contract for Jesse Marsh. I want someone young. I want someone innovative. I want someone not similar to Ralph, but something similar that the academy can kind of bleed into. For me, I'd probably go with Matthias Yassel. I really like him. I mean, he's currently Salzburg at the moment. He's an RB project, similar to Marsh, similar to Ralph, obviously. He plays expansive football. He sets up in a 4-3-1-2, which I think our players would suit. I mean, we saw Sulemana play up front in a 2 with Paul, and I thought he looked really good. I mean, obviously, the Austrian league is an all right league. It's definitely not as big as the Championship. So even if we were to go down, it might be a step up for him. I feel like he's got a very young squad at Salzburg. He's got them playing nice football. Probably wouldn't be overly expensive. The only issue would be is he in line for the Leipzig job eventually? Because obviously that's the way RB like to promote. But as a manager who might want a step up, an instant step up in his career, yeah, he might have to take a short-term L of getting relegated from the Premier League. But then there's an opportunity that he gets us promoted in we do have a squad at the moment, even when 75% of those players leave. And as they said on Tuesday night, we will have vast investment to get us back into the Premier League if we were to go down. Then potentially he has a shot in the Premier League with already having a year to warm up in a championship to get used to the players. I quite like it.
I agree with that mindset, regardless if it's him or anyone else. I do kind of agree with that mindset. It's just for me, based on how long term the project is, I think we've got 16 games. Like, don't get me wrong, this isn't a normal season. At this point in February, you've got maybe 12 games left. 16 games and a 4-point gap. That is very, very overturnable.
We are lucky.
And we're very lucky.
Very lucky.
We are incredibly lucky that there have been some, dire performances from some pretty damn good teams that are down there, and they shouldn't be. But let me just read out the current favourites. So Jesse Marsh obviously has now become favourite with this Athletic piece. Steven Gerrard, who we haven't talked about.
Absolutely not.
Marcelo Gallardo. Okay, there's a quick one. Would you rather Jesse Marsh or Steven Gerrard?
Marsh.
Lim?
He says Marsh.
Marsh. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that, in fairness. Gallardo, and then we're talking Sellés. Dean Smith's on there, absolutely not.
What?
Nuno, Espirito Santo, that's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I'd take him, to be fair.
He'd make us defensively better for sure. Ralph, a return for Ralph's on there. Rafa.
I was kind of thinking earlier, I put it in the chat anyway, but saying if you're going to go for Jesse Marsh, then you might as well just get Ralph Hasenhüttl back. But then obviously it's not going to happen. But
no, mate, that would be the ultimate.
System.
That would be pretty
show
funny.
Of weakness.
Honestly, I bet he's laughing right now.
We'll get this comment up from our friends over at Matchday Vlogs. Do you think whoever takes the role is taking a serious risk or is in a no-lose situation?
No lose.
No, I think it's a no-lose. I think you're bottom of you're taking over bottom of the Premier League. Your sole job. Well, it depends what type of appointment we make. I think.
Yeah, it depends on the caliber of manager, doesn't it?
Obviously, the short term is to keep us in the Premier League, but I do think the appointment that's made will be thought of in regard to, okay, can they actually make us a stable Premier League club? Should they take this side to survival? So that's an interesting thought.
I think if you were to get a manager of Poch's caliber or a top tier manager, they don't want a relegation on their CV, do they? So it doesn't matter where that relegation comes from. So probably for just the way you look at it, really. Yeah,
I mean, the only situation I can think of where something similar to that has happened was when Benitez went to Newcastle, and he had a lot less time, and that situation was a lot more dire. I mean, that's Newcastle. It's a massive club. I think I personally don't think we could do something similar to that. I don't think we're as attractive of a proposition personally.
We're not as big.
We're not. No, we're not as big, and we've got to accept that. But it would be interesting though if Jesse Marsh is appointed, because I believe in Southampton's statement they said Sellés will at least take charge of preparations for Chelsea. Could well be in the dugout for Chelsea. And then that means that the next manager's first game, I believe, is Leeds away. So Marsh's first game could be Leeds away. If he's
I reckon we'll have this wrapped up by Tuesday or Wednesday. I reckon the new manager will be in for Chelsea. Genuinely.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. I'd like to think so. I mean, personally, if we still talk about Marsh, I thought he was a likable character. I thought he came across quite well in his press conferences.
Yeah.
But I could completely understand where the frustrations lay with Leeds fans. Having said that, the last time we were in a massive scrap against relegation, we went for a manager who was sacked by a relegation rival and ultimately stayed up. That's all I'm going to say about that. In Mark Hughes, of course.
It's fair enough.
But for me, like we've said, I don't really want to keep going on about it because who knows? It could be someone completely different to Marsh. It's just the kind of the first name that's come out of the hat from a reliable source. But I think, like I've said before, Southampton fans need to be inspired. Southampton fans need some reinstallment of belief that this team can actually stay up this season. Because if we just accept that we're down already, what's the point?
We might as well fight.
if we've accepted, and if the football club have accepted that it's already been relegated, keep sellers on for the rest of the season and appoint someone in the summer. If that's going to be the mentality, I think they absolutely have to go for it now. And look, you're completely right. No manager wants a relegation on their CV. Poch definitely wouldn't. And I think it's a waste of breath even mentioning his name when it comes to this, because that's how unlikely I think it would be. People think, oh, if you throw money at him, he'll come. I don't think he's that type of manager personally.
He's not that type of man.
I don't think he's that type of man. The only reason... Okay, here's something. Do you think people would be as keen on Pochettino if he hadn't managed Southampton in the past? Because personally, I think it's mainly a name being thrown out because of his links with the club.
I still think if he didn't manage, I think the only reason why he is getting linked and named as much is because he managed.
But that's my point. That's my point.
But I think
he'd never come here without being the previous manager
associated with the football club. Exactly, because.
But I'd still take him if he obviously.
Yeah,
he did a great job.
I think. But my point is, with that logic, you say Thomas Tuchel could come to Southampton if you threw the money at him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, I've always said, like, with these top managers, obviously, I know we're not going to bring one in, but surely, like, they'd want to test themselves at a lower level to actually see how actual of a good manager they are. Whereas Poch, like, built himself from the bottom to the top. Whereas, like, all these managers, like Guardiola, he's obviously been at Barcelona, Bayern, and City. He's never tested himself at a lower level. Obviously, they're going to want a lot of money, but
the reason why they haven't is because they simply don't need to prove themselves at that level.
I know they don't, but I think
there's no reason for Guardiola to up sticks.
Yeah, I would say.
No, which is a shame.
I've always thought about it, to be honest.
I just can't see a manager that we appoint now overseeing us getting relegated, staying on for the Championship. That is how I see it.
Yeah. That's when I said bringing March on an 18-month deal. It's a win-win, really. After 6 months, if we go down, they're not paying out much. It's only a year. I think you can properly restart.
Almost as big a mistake as appointing Nathan Jones was giving him a 3.5 year contract.
Deal. That was just ridiculous.
We said that at the time.
Stupid,
we all said that at the time. 3.5 years.
They've had to pay out more for his contract than they actually paid Luton for.
I completely accept that on paper, that was the sort of manager that they were looking at. And that's completely fair enough. And it hasn't worked. And I think now we just have to move on and accept the fact that we're incredibly lucky to still be, we've got our heads above water still. We're 4 points
2 games,
away.
Dan. 2 games could change everything.
It's 2 victories. All it is now is about whether we can pull our fingers out of our backsides and if the other teams around us start dropping off, because that is the most worrying thing for me. They're starting to pick up form. This is another weekend where the majority of the teams around us have picked up some sort of points. We'll see what happens with Everton tomorrow. But the way Liverpool are at the moment and the way Everton played against Arsenal, you back them for a point potentially. I know it's at Anfield, but you could genuinely back them for a point. And
I mean,
Leeds
beat Liverpool at Anfield. So
Leeds beat Liverpool at Anfield. I mean, Leeds should have beaten Man United today.
Yeah, they were really good today. They were a good watch.
Yeah, they really were.
So it's all a bit of a frustration for me anyway. But ultimately, I think we're all glad that we're in this position, that we're not having to go another week with Nathan Jones. It was fun. It was fun. Some of the comments in the press conference
was fun. It was shit, but it was fun.
It was all a good laugh. But no, what I want to do next is move on to have a little chat about Chelsea and the next kind of run of games really. We'll do a Chelsea preview in the week specifically, but I kind of want to go through the remaining games for whichever manager comes in, what they've got left to deal with. Because personally, there are some in there I genuinely think are make or break. So obviously, Chelsea and Leeds are way to finish off February. I think it's very exciting that the club have got a decent chance of getting to Wembley in the FA Cup.
Yeah.
Given the fact that, on paper, they should be able to get past Grimsby. And then some of the teams that are still in the draw, you just need another favourable draw, because there are some teams in there who will make the quarterfinal that you'd say if they were drawn against Southampton, it's favourable. That's quite funny. It's 7 out of 8, but I know
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in a very satire way. Is
weird
it
way.
fun? By the way?
But then, and this is where the competitiveness of the Premier League, as I'm looking at it, just is emphasised, and I think this is where we're really struggling.
I'm not seeing a
You know, is he all right? I mean, Leicester at home, Man United away. I mean, Brentford's a really tough game at home. Spurs, West Ham. I mean, you look at some of those
that
games.
Spurs game get changed, wouldn't it, if we beat Grimsby?
Well, yeah. I mean, the winnable games on paper are still seriously tough. The ones that we're going to point out as, okay, we need to win that one if we've got any chance, they're seriously tough.
It's Leeds and Leicester, to be honest. Like, if you can get 6 points out of that, then it changes around.
I mean,
like
short term, I agree. Short term, that's what we should be looking at.
I genuinely think that it would be incredibly Southampton of us to go to Chelsea and get something. Incredibly Chelsea of Chelsea. Incredibly Chelsea.
Well, given how they're playing at the moment, you know, you'd have to back some sort of performance. I mean, seeing people say like, hopefully we beat Chelsea, then Potter gets sacked and we appoint Potter. I mean, it's fun.
For me, it would be more interesting with the player situation, especially with like Armel, Duje, and Miroslav Orsic. I think the treatment of them will be. That's, I think, one thing that really annoyed the fans. Obviously, I understand Armel been injured for a bit, but he played 90 minutes in the B team, so he's obviously got some sort of fitness. The treatment of Duje has just been totally disrespectful.
I mean,
Orsic, I understand he's got less match fitness, but even if he come off 20 minutes, he's a player that's going to get us goals and where we struggle. And for me, that's just an absolute disgrace.
It's a good point, and I think that emphasises that Orsic was probably a Sport Republic signing as opposed to a Nathan Jones signing. But at the same time, that is
still a right signing though. Getting a bargain.
I know. I agree. I agree. But as well as that, you've obviously got Onuachu and Sulemana, who've now played about a game and a half.
Sulemana had 90 minutes, didn't he? He was an absolute baller. Baller.
No, we like what we saw from Sulemana yesterday.
I haven't been lifted off my seat like that in a long time.
But there you go. What do you think they're thinking? I mean,
I reckon Silly stays, man. I don't think these players would have come if they weren't prepared to stay for a season in the Championship.
Yeah,
especially someone like Paul. Paul could be perfect for the Championship.
That's the
one thing that could. I don't reckon he's not a player who suits Jesse March's system. He's not a runner, bless him. He is not a runner.
Paul.
Big Paul.
Yeah,
my mate, Big Paul. He ain't a runner. So it's like, I think Adams could play a lot and Paul would be someone off the bench. But
I mean, all season I've been drafting my potential Southampton Championship 11. I mean, when we signed James Bree, he went straight in there.
Yeah, he actually could.
What about Tino as well? Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll leave. He ain't going to play this season. So it's like,
Tino.
Still going to snap him up.
It's a conversation we can have another time. Personally, I just want to see who they get in. But yeah, it's like you've still got Crystal Palace to play, Bournemouth,
that
Forest,
game is
Fulham,
West Ham away. Big game.
It's whether we're up by then, though. It's whether we're still in the fight by then. You know what I mean?
I think this is the worry for me. The next couple of fixtures are really tricky, or a lot of them are really tricky. And it's a case now as to whether by the time we get to our final kind of run of winnable games on paper, whether we're going to be dead and buried by then. Because realistically, I think someone made a really good point. I think it was in a group chat or something privately. I can't remember who it was, or it might have been a tweet. But basically, Southampton need a 50% win rate in the league to get to 39 points for the rest of the season.
And that was Hassan, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Hassan. Shout out Hassan.
I think we can stay up with less than that.
Yeah, I mean, some of the team. I mean, given the players and how badly some of them have played this season, like Everton before getting Daesh. I mean, that was horrific. Leeds under Marsh for the last couple of games was pretty poor. Wolves under Large for the first bit, they were dread. I mean, and even Forest
couldn't really score though, could they?
Villa under Gerrard, terrible.
You know,
I'm surprised Bruno Large hasn't been linked with the job. To be fair, I don't think it's that bad.
I think it's an easy narrative, isn't it? So I know what you mean, and I think the same about Gerrard, and I thought the same about Marsh until we saw that the interest is genuine. So yeah, it's a frustrating one, but I think we've got to be happy ultimately that Jones is gone and that we're in a position where we can pull ourselves out of it. But just to kind of wrap up as we reach the half an hour mark, I want from both of you a realistic choice. I know Rob, you've kind of talked about the Salzburg manager, but out of the kind of names we've talked about who are on the bookies list, I want a name from both of you and a rating out of 5 as to your confidence that Southampton stay in the Premier League this season. Rob, you can start.
I'll start, shall I?
Yeah.
I'm looking at Bet365, and there's names like Darren Moore. By the way, I'm just saying,
Right.
Right. My most really, it will be Marsh. I just got that feeling it just will be Marsh. Look at Leeds. They've been rejected by Irola, Slot, and the West Brom manager. I'm looking at that. There's nothing here. Tedesco's probably going to go to Belgium. Nuno. It'll be Marsh.
I think Nuno's still got a job in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, he's in Arabia still, and he's doing really well. But obviously, it's Saudi Arabia, so I think it'll be Marsh. In terms of Saints staying up, I'll give it 2. Like you're right. Looking at those fixtures right now, I got up in front of me. There's nothing winnable there, unless things change fast.
Bournemouth's the only one I'm looking at.
Yeah, and even then,
do you know what I mean?
They love St Mary's, don't they? So.
But Bournemouth at the moment, and this is. Maybe a little bit disrespectful to say because we are below them, but Bournemouth, the only team right now that I look at and think they could genuinely finish bottom or below us, even only team.
Yeah, I go with Marsh and a solid 2 out of 10.
Marsh,
but I'd love it if it was a little bit more inventive, like a Yassel, or even bringing that William Still bloke from Liga. Why not? He hasn't even got a coaching pro license, but why? That'd be fun.
Yeah, I know. Liam.
I think obviously I'd agree with Rob, Jesse March. And then I don't think this is like very unrealistic, but a name we haven't mentioned yet, which I quite like him. I don't know what your opinions are, but Russell Martin from Swansea. I really like him. I think it's a good brand of football. I think he's definitely a manager. If we went down to the Championship, I'd love to bring him in. I think he's a great brand of football. Young, exciting manager. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. But
there would be
like
absolutely
right.
I think what I'm going to say about that one is I think you're absolutely spot on if we do go down, because I've seen him in a couple of press conferences lately and he looks dead. Like he just looks so frustrated with the whole situation, because it was the same situation Potter had, just no money to spend. I completely agree. Exactly. He does play an attractive, or his size do play an attractive style of football. I mean, hell, if we hadn't ever appointed Jones and we'd gone down, I think we would be talking about him. He was Championship Manager of the Year last season. So it's that kind of mindset. But I think, if we appointed another manager from the Championship this summer,
there would be genuinely riots outside.
I think there would be some riots, genuinely some riots. So, okay, it's an interesting shout, but I respect it. I personally think the most likely, I think it will be Jesse Marsh. I think it makes sense.
I think 100%.
It aligns. It all aligns with that playbook. It does.
It does align with the playbook. I mean,
we do have the right players for like this sort of system, though. Yeah, I mean, but
I've looked at how many goals Leeds score. I mean, I think Marsh was in charge for, I think it was almost 38 Premier League games. I think the equivalent of the time he was in charge
under a year, wasn't it?
Was about a full season in the Premier League equivalent. And they scored a lot of goals. We haven't been scoring goals. It was just so leaky at the back.
Their defense was dire.
And
they didn't have a great defensive options anyway.
But that was the point I was about to make. I genuinely feel that he's got a squad there he could really work with and get the better. I think on paper, Leeds' squad is better than ours. That's, they've invested more money and we can accept that. But I do think this is still a really exciting crop of players. I think the guys we brought in over January are really exciting.
There's enough here.
Sulemana yesterday. I've seen all the clips. I mean,
Alcaraz as well was unbelievable.
Alcaraz, there's some really exciting players here. it's a good group. I mean, he's got Ward Prowse to play with as well. That's that should be exciting. So,
can I just say one name which hasn't been mentioned,
mate,
which
please
I
do.
would find really entertaining? Marcelo Bielsa would be fucking hilarious.
It'd be interesting. It'd be
That would be
very,
hilarious.
very
He rejected
interesting.
Everton, didn't he? Because he needs at least like 6 weeks for like his little process. I think he offered to manage
really?
under 23s until like if Everton stayed up, he'd manage like the under 23s and go for it.
I think I heard about that. I think that'd be really exciting. Honestly,
I do think it'd be exciting. I mean, either way, it looks like a former Leeds manager could well be on their way to Ellen Road in like 2 weeks, which is quite amusing to me. But yeah, I'm gonna say Marsh. I think he's the most realistic option. Like I said, I still stand by everything I said about how it's uninspiring, how it's not really what the fans want to see right now. But I think it's the most realistic. And bare minimum for me right now, I think what this team's been crying out for is Premier League experience. And although Marsh only has a year of it, it's better than a lot of the candidates that have come up. And I do think it's what we need. I think I'd love a Gallardo. I'd love someone from Europe, someone exciting. But I just can't see how, because we've seen Nathan Jones' biggest issue was adapting to the Premier League.
Absolutely. He was, he didn't realise that he didn't have any time.
I don't see how a manager with no Premier League experiences keeps this team up.
I mean, we had six weeks when he come in from the old into a World Cup break, and he said a comment about, I didn't have the full squad, mate. You had every single player for 4 weeks. Armel and Sally come back for the last 4 weeks. They both got out. He had the whole squad. Don't come at me and say you didn't have it. The Sports Public really need to come out and say we messed up, and that's what annoys me more. They haven't come out and said we messed up. And if we actually appointed someone like, I reckon Bielsa would have come in November, because he would have had that 6 weeks to have his squad, and a manager of some sort of European quality would have come in November. But now it's just too late. I know we have 16 games left, but for me, there's not enough time for a new manager, for a European manager, to come in and get his style going. So I think someone like Jesse March, who can probably implement it straight away, and he has that Premier League experience, is probably the most realistic and probably best option for us right now.
I mean, Marsh has been playing a 4-2-3-1/4-2-2, which we know that these players are used to playing, the majority of them.
Exactly.
So it does make sense. If I was Sport Republic, I'm looking at managers available. When you, as Liam said, you need one that can just slot straight in there and
fits
get
the bill.
It makes sense.
And that's it. It does make sense.
It's just a bit shit. But beggars can't be choosers. Yeah. I'd take Marsh over Jones initially. So yeah, who knows? Maybe he gets on better at Saints if he does come here. Yeah. I personally think the squad that he had, I think Saints had as good, if not a better squad on paper than that Leeds team. And also, you have to remember, at Leeds, he had so many injury concerns. Like the injury list of Leeds is insane. So, yeah, I mean, if March does come in, I completely understand why. And he's a very positive bloke, and young players need that affirmation.
I think he's a likable bloke. It's annoying 100%. Because he brought in Weston McKennie, and we could have done with someone like him.
Oh, absolutely.
Or
Tyler Adams.
Well, I think we got Carlos Alcaraz, though, to be honest. I won't lie. I think the kid's a real deal. I think
he's mustard. My boy.
He's a good little player. No, we'll see what happens, but I do agree with the idea that it will probably be wrapped up by Wednesday, or I think it'll be wrapped up before Chelsea. Whether they take the Chelsea game is another question to be considered. But just to wrap up, my confidence rating is probably a 2 right now. I mean, like I've said, I've looked at the distance for the Championship away days. I've drafted the potential Saints Championship 11. I'm trying to slowly accept it, so that when it does come to the time, if it does, then I can process it a bit better. But yeah, we'll see. But for now, I think we've just got to think anyone's probably going to be better than what we got with Jones. But I'm going to wrap it up there, because I think that's enough to talk about. But thank you everyone who's joined live if you're watching on repeat as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already with your notifications turned on. Follow us on all of our socials, and there will be a stream midweek ahead of Chelsea. Potentially another one. If we've got a new manager in charge, we'll have to see, but I think it's going to be a big week ahead. Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you in a bit.